Hello, people. Welcome to Erick English. Today we have one important guest in, on our channel. Today we have Gordon Love. Then, hello, Gordon. How are you today?
Hello, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Excellent.
Uh, okay. I'm going to introduce our guest today. He is from the UK. He has lived and worked all over the United Kingdom and across much of the United States. He's been an engineer, a software developer, a management consultant, and a senior development manager. Okay, then in order to start, please, Gordon, I know that I already make a short introduction of you, but please walk us through your professional life, jobs, experiences, and roles.
So, my professional life has been long and varied. I started off, as you say, as an engineer. I was a planning engineer on a power station build. And then I went off to be a materials controller in a petrochemical plant build. And all through this time, I was also developing project management information systems. So I was a software developer as well. And then I went off to the City of London to work for the stock exchange, which is quite a big change from someone working for construction companies. And the reason was that they needed project management expertise for large scale projects. So they were pulling people in from construction in order to get that expertise from large scale project management. And I ended up as over the course of the years as a management consultant. And I even invented a new field of project management. I was the first person to write a methodology for a field that became known as benefits realization management, which I'm very pleased about. And then after that, I started teaching. I wasn't teaching English. I was teaching children's physical activity. I was really teaching various forms of martial arts to children, either after school or in within the school hours. And I would
Okay.
travel from school to school to school, carrying a big bag of swords with me, because anything to do with swords is something I really enjoy. So fencing, eskrima in Spanish, I think it is. And then COVID came along,
Okay.
and
Oof.
I was no longer able to teach that. And so I was at a loose end. Everyone was in lockdown. We couldn't get children to share equipment, and I was online. And so this comes on to my next part of life. So I've been many different things. As a management consultant, I've been a methods author. I've been a senior development manager, also as a management consultant, stepping in to fill in some temporary vacancies, that sort of thing. I ran pensions, payroll, and HR systems development and maintenance for what became a global bank in the end, a global top 10 bank. So yeah, I've done many different things.
Oof, a lot. You have a lot of experience in a lot of fields, it seems.
It's safe to say I've done something of a lot of things. I've not necessarily done something in great depth, although having said that, project management and software development I have done in great depth. But I've also done a little bit of lots of other things.
Okay, great. And then it's really interesting to know all of that of you. Yes, because in my short life, I have also done a lot of things, but like minor jobs, something like I was auxiliary on a truck. I was in a working warehouse, but in as a teacher, I just have kind of 4 years. Yes, then it's interesting. to know that. And then, uh, second, here we have, what inspired you to start teaching English and focus on pronunciation and phonetics?
Um, it's quite simple. During COVID and a bit after, I hadn't been teaching fencing. And I also had some heart attacks at the same time, and it took me a long time to recover because the cardiac rehab closed down because of COVID. So I was at home, and while I was online, someone else said, "Oh, we're going to have a meeting. A group of us are going to have a meeting. Come to a platform called Clubhouse. We'll have the meeting there. It's a great place for a group of us to have a meeting."
Mhm.
So I said, okay. And I signed up for Clubhouse. I went there. None of the other people ever turned up. So I had a Clubhouse account, and at one point, Clubhouse, I must have brushed it as against the controls as I put my phone in my pocket, and Clubhouse came on, and I was listening to a Clubhouse room. And so after a few days, I went back to join other Clubhouse rooms. And it turned out there were two groups of people, people who were in Clubhouse to network with other native English language speakers, and people who were there to learn English and to interact with native speakers.
Okay.
The problem
Mhm.
was these were two very separate groups. The
Wow.
native speakers kept to themselves, and the people who wanted to speak to native language speakers to learn English were left in another area. And so it turned out I started opening a room. I think it was called something like Native Speaker Gives Short One-to-One Lessons.
Yes.
And people came in, and I didn't know what to expect, but people came in, and I gave some informal advice on English because that's all I could do. I was a high-level user of English. I'd been a
Yeah.
methods author, so I'd been a business writer. I'd even done a little bit of community journalism, or there's another word for it, I've forgotten. But basically, journalism done because you feel the need to talk about a cause, an issue worth discussing that's not being covered by more major outlets. Um, so I wrote for uh, an online newspaper called Bylines Scotland about Scottish issues, mainly to do with energy pricing and energy use. That was what I wrote about mainly.
Mhm.
Sometimes a little about Scottish politics.
Yeah.
And so I was a writer. I was also the person who the other journalists tend to consult if they needed grammar advice. So I was very confident about my English skills.
Mhm.
I just spent 15 years teaching more or less full time. So I was very confident in my teaching skills. So I was quite happy to put these two sets of skills together.
Yes.
And it turned out
Right.
almost everyone was coming in to ask for one of the same 12 or 13 lessons. The people were asking for the same things all the time. And a lot of it they weren't asking about pronunciation, but they were very unconfident about their English, and they found being understood quite difficult.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed was that people tended to be taught English in their home country, and their teachers had been taught in their home country. And so a lot of the teaching of English was happening by people who didn't speak English as a first language,
Mhm.
but who had learned from someone who learned English as a second language, and they learned English from someone who learned English as a second language. So often the people who were teachers either were aware that they didn't know much about English speech, they knew a lot about grammar, they knew a lot about vocabulary, they knew a lot about the written forms because they worked
Yes.
from exercise books.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
but they didn't really have an awful lot of exposure to spoken English.
It's
And they
very
weren't able
important.
to, yeah, and they weren't able to teach spoken English because they'd
Mhm.
never learnt it. And so one of two things generally happened as far as I could see. One, the teacher knew that they weren't very good at spoken English and so concentrated on books, concentrated on the grammar, concentrated on the vocabulary,
Mm.
concentrated on reading and writing, because the exams were going to ask you about reading and writing anyway. So you were
Yes.
going to pass your exams by
Mhm.
concentrating on those things. Spoken English was not going to be assessed in the exam, therefore, why learn about it?
Oh, where were you when that happened?
So I was here in Scotland, and the people were mainly in India, but from all around the world, really. India, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, some from Japan, some from Vietnam, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Iran, Egypt, lots of people from Egypt. So they were from pretty much all over Central and Eastern Asia.
Okay.
Some from Africa, but not as many. And quite a lot from South America.
Yes.
When I went to other platforms, unfortunately, Clubhouse changed its user interface and I found it very difficult to use. And then a friend of mine said, try a platform called Hi Local. So I did.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Hi Local isn't as carefully maintained as it used to be. And so I've moved to Tandem mainly. And in fact, that's where I met you.
Okay. All right.
So all of these are social audio platforms where you can get together in groups. Some people will be up on a stage, some people will be in the audience. All the people on the stage can use the microphone, the people in the audience are only listening. So it almost becomes like putting on a performance in a theatre or putting on a radio show, a
Okay.
little.
Very, very interesting all that you said, and how the pandemic changed the life of many people.
It did, didn't it?
Oh my gosh. If that wouldn't have happened, maybe you weren't teaching English nowadays.
So what happened is I was teaching informally, and the more people came to me with pronunciation issues, the more often I was giving pronunciation guidance.
Hmm.
And I eventually said, well, it's silly me writing up this guidance fresh every time. I should gather the phonetic guidance I'm giving, put it into a word processor file so I can copy and paste it.
Yes.
And then it turns out if you put it in a word processing document, it's hard to find the thing that you've added. When you've added many things, finding them becomes difficult. So then you need to put it into order so that you can look for it and search for it easily. So it went into a spreadsheet and then it became a database and it just kept going. By the time I had 5,500 words, I thought, this is a dictionary. So I published it as a dictionary.
Yes, that's why.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, okay. All right. Now we are going to move on to next. Then some of us know about you, precisely you were talking about your book, and some of us know about the book. But could you tell us a bit more about the Love English Phonetic Dictionary?
Certainly. I talk about this a lot. I love talking about my book. I am very proud of my book. It's now been a bestseller in TEFL settings in 14 different countries around the world. So I'm very pleased with it. And it is basically an easy to use guide to speaking over 5,000 English words. It gives you clearer, simpler pronunciation guidance so that you're easier to understand. And so what do I mean by that? Some of you may have heard of the IPA, the International Phonetic Association, and the International Phonetic Alphabet. This is an attempt to write down the sounds of languages for people to use so that they can read a word, they can read how to pronounce the word, and that gives them help. Unfortunately, the IPA takes years to master, certainly years to learn and even more years to master. It's designed for people who are researching multiple languages. That's its principal aim. And so I decided this was maybe a little too much for someone who's just trying to learn a second language, trying to learn English to use English. They don't want to spend 2 or 3 years learning the IPA to learn English better. They just want to learn English better. And so I wrote a simpler way of writing phonetic guidance, simpler and more obvious. I'll send the flip chart diagram that shows how different my system is. And you can stick it in. Okay, so this will be an edit. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And this system, because it's easier and because it uses spellings from English that you learn early in your English language learning journey, my hope is that it's quicker and easier to learn. The other thing I did was I realized that although many people say there are 20, 23, 25, 28 vowel sounds in English, people who are learning English as a foreign language only need to learn 12.
Wow.
Now, this is if you only have to learn 12 instead of 20, if you only have to learn 12 instead of 25, that's a big advantage in the learning process.
Okay.
So in Spanish, you have 5 pure vowels.
Yes.
A, E, I, O, U.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I don't really know Colombian Spanish all that well. I would love it to hear A, E, I, O, U in Colombian Spanish.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, English has A, it has A, it has I, it has O, it has U, but it has other sounds as well. It has E, it has I, it has O, it has A. You need those vowel sounds to be able to speak English so that people can tell if you're talking about a fall, if you're talking about a fill, if you're talking about a fell.
Yes. What a coincidence, sorry. What a coincidence, because I teach the same to my students in the place that I work. And I always tell them that there are in Spanish we have 5 vowels and we have to teach other 7 in order to learn how to speak English correctly. And everybody's like, wow, they are amazed about the fact. But now you just confirm the theory that I had.
Yeah. So you need 4 more pure vowels for English. And you want to tweak the ones that are in Spanish a little. And then there are what are called vowel glides. And there are vowel glides in Spanish, I'm sure. I, for instance. But in English, it happens very quickly and becomes the sound I. And the 2 other vowel glides are, one vowel glide is au, which if you say it fast enough becomes ow. And another one is oi. And if you say that fast enough, it becomes oi. So if you've got those 12 vowel sounds, A, E, I, O, U, ow, oi, a, I, o, a, you can produce any word in English.
Yeah.
very well, very intelligibly. Because particularly when you're coming from Spanish and from many other languages, there are what are called minimal pairs. If you change one part of the sequence of sounds, it becomes a different word. So fill and feel. You can fill a bottle full of water. You can feel bumps on your skin. Fill and feel are very different words.
Wow.
Or grin and green. Grin is a big smile.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at grinning to order. Green is a color.
Wow. Just the difference is too small.
In Spanish, there's no difference. You use y for both. So you will
Yeah.
hear people saying words like beach and sheet, and people in English will go, "What did you just say?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
This is because the E sound, when a Spanish speaker says E, we will hear it as E, not as I.
Mm-hmm.
And the E sound is much less common than the I sound. The most common word in the English language is the word the, which has a sound at the beginning, which is not in almost any other language, and then a sound at the end, which is almost not in any other language. Th and I. I'm sure you must spend a lot of time teaching those sounds.
Yes.
Yes, it's the
That's
burden of the English teacher. Almost
yeah.
everyone in the world does not use these sounds in their first language. I think maybe the Scandinavian languages and German, maybe Greek, interestingly enough. And that's about it. Every other language just uses something that's halfway between I and E. It's kind of halfway. E.
Yes. I have the places where I've worked. I've had other coworkers, and they usually they teaching they uh, they may make some mistakes, and then I notice and that is not correct, but sometimes I don't know how to correct that because they maybe feel offended about the fact that I correct them, and then I prefer not to do it. But I noticed there are some problems in the teaching process and about the pronunciation. I've been working really hard on it. And I don't know, this is not a coincidence that I meet you in these days. And then it's really fantastic knowing all of this. Then we are going to move to next. Another question. How can one student learn the sounds and readings of the English words? Maybe what is the best way they can learn these sounds?
In my opinion, bearing in mind that I have not come to this as a professional linguist, I've come from an engineering background.
Mhm.
My strong opinion is that the best way to learn it, and I've been doing lots of trialing and testing and evaluation of this, is that if you as an adult can be taught to make the sounds of English, then gradually your brain will rewire itself to hear the sounds of English. Now, one of
Yeah.
the big problems is, even for you as an English language teacher, when I said fill and feel, when I said grin and green, which to my ear is a huge difference, you said, oh, that's a very small, subtle difference. I can hardly tell the difference. And this is because we learn the sounds that we rely on for the rest of our lives, most of us by age 12. We have by age 12, we have learnt all the sounds of the language that surrounds us, and your brain almost hardwires in processing of that sound.
Yes.
And that's why if you move to a country when you were 8 years old, by the time you were 10, you will sound like you lived there all your life.
Mm.
If you move to a country when you were 16 years old, you will sound like you moved from a different country, possibly for the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Mm,
And there's lots of academic support for this. This is my favorite book on the topic, for instance, How Languages Are
mm,
Learned by Lightbound and Spada. But there's lots of other textbooks, reference books that cover the same issues. And so lots of teachers say to their students, go and listen. Go and listen a lot. Listen to podcasts, listen to movies, listen to news broadcasts.
yeah.
And eventually you will get it. And it turns out you can go and live in another country and live there for 40 years, surrounded by native speakers, and you will not change the sounds that you use, which
Oh
means
my
that you
god.
will not change the sounds that you hear. And what I've been working on for the last 3 years is essentially a method to try and get people to learn how to use the sounds and then to use a lot of all the research I could lay my hands on how people learn, how habits are formed, the best ways to study, and to use that so that in 25 hours of teaching, i.e., you come to a class, I tell you how to make the sounds, I get you to practice making the sounds, I send you away for a week and you practice and you practice and you practice. What I recommend is 3 minutes a day, 3 times a day for 3 weeks. And 3 weeks is almost a magic number for building a new habit. If you've ever read books like Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
Making Habits, Breaking Habits, all those books, they're all based on the same psychological research that shows this kind of a magic thing happens at week 2 or 3 if you're practicing.
Okay.
So I teach people the sounds A, E, I, O, U, Oi, A, E, I, O, A. And I get them to make the sounds individually. I give them simple words to say. I then give them more complicated words to say. I get them practicing 3 times a day, every day for 3 weeks, and then lesson 2 every day for 3 times a day for 3 weeks. And at the end of this, after about 3.5 months, 4 months, their brain has made new containers in their brain for sounds to come in. Instead of translating the sounds into the sounds of their first language, the sounds stay the sounds of English. For instance, if I say to a French person, this and that, the sound comes in and their unconscious mind converts it into the sounds of French, and they hear this and that.
Hmm.
Because z is a sound in French, th is not. So their brain converts it. So they hear this and that. So if I say to repeat the phrase back to me, they say this and that. So I
Yes.
need to teach them the sound th as simply a small isolated sound. And then I build that up into larger collections. So sounds into syllables and single syllable words, longer words, sentences, paragraphs. So I build up from these individual sounds. And the hope is that if you do the practice, and not everyone can be bothered doing the practice, if you do the practice after 3.5 months, you have internalized these new sounds. So someone, when they say this and that to you, and you're French, you'll hear this and that, which means that you'll be able to say this and that. And that's basically my view. If you do the listening route, it can be possible for you. Not some people do learn by listening, but it's far from guaranteed. Many people do not learn by listening. And it takes, even if you're skilled, experienced, and have learned many previous languages, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of listening to be able to start to hear the difference between fill and feel.
Yes. Wow.
So I think you can be taught to speak, and being taught to speak changes the way you hear English. Whereas if you listen and listen and listen, it's many hundreds of hours before it will change the way you speak.
Wow. Amazing. Then, in order to finish, Do you think that one student can learn the English sounds in 1 year? And an ESL student can learn to speak English in 1 year?
Absolutely. So the sounds of English, if you put 5 hours a week aside, you can get the sounds and the rhythms. And more importantly, English is a rhythm language. Spanish is more or less time aligned. It's more or less the same time for every syllable.
Mhm.
English is not like that. And most of the meaning of English, or the majority of the meaning of English, comes through the rhythm. So
Yes.
if I say escuela in Spanish, and English is school,
Cool.
there are consonant clusters in English. They don't really happen in Spanish. But more importantly, English has a rhythm to it. Every word that has more than one syllable has a primary stressed syllable, and then we have multiple de-emphasized syllables. And it's real. If you're a native speaker, you'll learn primary stress, secondary stress, tertiary stress, quaternary stress, and unstressed or de-stressed. But as a learner of English as a foreign language, you only need to learn primary stressing and unstressed or de-stressed. That's all you need to learn. So instead of learning 25 vowel sounds or 20 vowel sounds, you learn 12. Instead of learning 5 stress levels, you learn 2. This helps enormously. And the other thing is that being taught about the rhythm of English doesn't happen very often. Even if you're learning to teach English as a foreign language as a native speaker, the teaching materials do not tell you the importance of rhythm. So you don't teach the importance of rhythm when you become a teacher.
Yes, yes, I've noticed that. I I've been also teaching that to my students. That rhythm is very important, and I give them the example of songs. I tell them the learning English is like you are learning a song. You have to learn the rhythm, the melody, and then for me, English has the same. That has a melody and has a rhythm. And I tell them that if you learn English as it was a song, that could be really helpful for you. And
Absolutely.
then they catch the idea immediately and okay, yes, teacher. And the people who has followed my advice, they usually learn really fast. There are a few of them, but I've noticed that that works a lot.
Absolutely.
Then,
If you can learn the rhythm, you can tell the difference between deepened, depend, and depend.
yes,
3 different words in English, 3 different spellings, 3 different meanings, and they have the same sounds. They use d, e, p, e, n, d, but the rhythm is so different. Deepened, depend, depend. 3 different approaches to it. 3 different songs, if you like.
yeah, yeah. The stress of the word, the accent, not the stress of the word, and the rhythm. Yes. And finally, I'd like to share with you one experience that I had. 4 years ago, I worked for a call center. I had to help people. I had to provide support over the phone to people in Texas. And then it was a very difficult experience for me. Um, Most of them usually used to tell me that they were having a really hard time understanding me, and sometimes the same, the same for me. And some of them, like they were like a bit angry with me. Yeah, I make them upset sometimes because I didn't understand the things that they said, and sometimes they didn't understand what I said. Then here is the question. What do you think is the best way for an ESL student to make themselves understood in that case? Because uh, to better understand native speakers in an English conversation because I had a really hard time trying to understand them also. And I did my best. I thought in those days that I had a very good English. But when I faced that situation, uh, that was a very challenging situation for me. And I noticed that I had to change something in my English. I have to practice differently this. Then that's when I started finding all this that you also say. This is not coincidence. This is There is a reason why I I met you the last it was the last week, and then this is why we are here discussing about it. Then that is the question. What do you think is the best way for an ESL student to make the SEMs understood and to better understand native speakers in an English conversation?
I know it starts to sound like I only have one solution for everything, but
Yes.
really, I have one solution for everything. Most people learn a lot of grammar and a lot of vocabulary, and almost no one learns much in the way of phonetics. If we want to be understood, we need to say the words in the way that someone is expecting them to sound. If we say a word and no one understands what word it is we have just said, we're going to have difficulty being understood. One of the things I did for some work that I was doing for the world's largest healthcare organization is I invented a way of simply and quickly calculating how easy it was to be understood on each word. I would take the target pronunciation and the target rhythm, and then I would compare the things that you said to the target. It's not, it's not rocket science. It's quite straightforward, but very few people do it, and very few people include the rhythm. And once you do this comparison, you can almost predict if people will understand you or not. If you get the target pronunciation, 80, 90% people will understand you. Native speakers are only 80, 85% the same as each other when they're speaking often, if they have different enough accents. But they generally understand each other well. If you go below 80%, certainly, down to kind of 50, 60%, people can understand you most of the time if they're putting in all of their attention. And they can do things like watch your lips and watch your face. You'll find that people can understand you more easily on a video call than they can if they're watching you, listening to you just on the phone, because they
Yes.
can see your mouth move. Um, Equally, some people's hearing gets better for talking to other people in real life if they put their spectacles on.
Yes.
And it turns out seeing people's faces and also not having your brain distracted trying to puzzle out what they're looking at when they're not wearing their spectacles, that takes a lot of brain power, and that is taken away from listening properly. So it turns out the brain has a limited amount of brain power. If you give the brain too much work to do, it can understand you for a while, and then it gets exhausted and you stop being able to pay attention and listen as carefully.
Yes.
Then there's dropping down to about 25% seems to be about the magic percentage. If you drop below 25%, so the things you're saying are really quite different from what the person's expecting, then they might not understand you at all. And remember, this is rhythm as well as pronunciation. If you get the pronunciation perfect and you don't get any of the rhythm, that's you at 50%. Unless you get
Mhm.
the rhythm, you can't go above 50%, unless you get the rhythm by accident.
Yes.
So if you can get some of the rhythm, that brings you up, makes you much easier to understand. But eventually, if you only get half of the pronunciation right and you get none of the rhythm right, that's you down to about 25%, maybe lower. And then you go from being able to be understood if people pay you very close attention and put all of their brain towards understanding you or trying to understand you, then it goes to the stage where people just simply don't understand you at all. So
Yes.
if you can get your pronunciation up towards a native target, it doesn't need to be one particular native target, just a native target. There are 120 native targets out there. Choose one of the ones in the middle. That's best. And you get the rhythm. Then people will be able to listen to you and understand you, and they'll be able to do it without effort. And if they do it without effort, A, you're not forcing them to do work. No one likes being forced to do work by someone.
Yes.
They find that annoying. Even if they're not consciously aware of it, they'll be getting annoyed. And over time, as their brain tires out and they're understanding you less and less, and they just can't put in the effort of listening anymore because their brain is now tired out, they'll also be more and more annoyed. And then eventually they just stop listening to you because
Yes.
they can't
Okay.
continue. Or they get so tired they can't listen to you anymore and they're angry, which is even worse, because then you might not get the second opportunity to have a longer conversation. Now, in a call center, you'll never speak to that person again, probably,
Yes.
unless you're third line support and you're, having repeated conversations with the customer or the person needing support. But typically in first line support, you get a call, you deal with it, you pass it on, you get another caller.
Yes.
So you'll never speak to that person again. It doesn't really matter that they won't want to speak to you again, unless, of course, they put in a bad report to your call center manager or your call
Yes.
center supervisor complaining about how difficult it was. So there are circumstances in life where you might meet the same people over and over again. If you go to work in another country, the people in your office, you're going to meet them every day. And if they find you very hard work to talk to because they have to put in all their effort and it tires them out for the day, they're going to try and not bother speaking to you the next day and the next day. Or I knew a person who had went to work in the office. He would pick up a cup of coffee on the way in one of the coffee shops. The coffee shop had someone at the till who was recently arrived in the country. And so the person who had recently arrived in the country really desperately wanted to practice his English
Mhm.
with all the customers who came in. Unfortunately, he didn't have very good English and it was a lot of effort. Now, people, wanted to genuinely interact with the nice person that they'd met. But equally, the next time you're going for a coffee, do you go and exhaust yourself for the morning by having that 5-minute coffee conversation, how you're just buying a coffee, or do you go to the other coffee shop?
Another coffee shop. Yes.
You go to the other coffee shop. And, I'm not saying this is admirable, but it is human.
Yes.
If you force us to do work, we're not going to like you for it. In any situation, if your boss comes along on a Friday afternoon and says, "You've got to stay late, I want that report."
Yes.
Do you think, what a wonderful boss? I really like him. I want to work here. No, you don't. You
No.
think, this is my weekend. I get to choose what I do at the weekend.
Yeah.
And it's the same with listening to someone who who is forcing us to engage our brains to fill in all the language that they're not providing for us. So there's something called an interlanguage. If you use the words of English, but you use the vowels and the consonants and the stress methods of Spanish, use the grammar of Spanish, you use the word choices of Spanish, only 1 part in 5 of that is English. 4 parts in 5 of that are Spanish. So if we want to fully understand you, we have to do the translation on your behalf for 80% of what you just said.
Yes. Okay.
No one likes being forced to do work for someone. And it's not like people come up and say, hi, I'm only going to speak 20% English. I'm going to speak 80% Spanish. Is that okay with you? Often what people say is, well, as long as I can communicate, I don't care. What they mean is, as long as I can get you to do all the work of translating, or most of the work of translating, I don't care. And personally, I think that's just rude. I don't think it's a nice thing to do to other people. So when I learn a language, I try very hard to learn the sounds of another language so that I'm doing all I can
To
to
teach.
provide something that's easy for the other person to accept and to understand. If you get the sounds and the rhythms right, to be perfectly honest, English grammar is fault tolerant. You will be able to say, the boy walked to the shops, or the boy to the shops walked, or to the shops the boy walked, to the shops walked the boy. Yeah, it walked the boy to the shops, walked to the shops the boy. All of these will be understandable, and they're all valid English. They're not commonplace. They'll tend to only be used in literature or poetry or in old books, but they're still understandable.
Yes.
So English is fault tolerant for grammar. However, it's got a huge vocabulary, huge vocabulary. And therefore, if you can help us understand you, then we'll be happier to talk to you. We'll be more capable of understanding you. We'll be able to speak to you for a much longer time. And if you're in a job interview or a client pitching meeting or in an international project team, your ideas will be picked up and used more. You'll be thought of as a more valuable potential employee. The client will find you easier to interact with, maybe compared to other suppliers who are pitching. So it turns out most of our communication is spoken, and if we concentrate on those elements of speech which are not to do with the books and the writing and the reading and the grammar and the vocabulary, but are to do with sounds and rhythms, it makes such a difference.
Wow, I have never thought about it yet, but that is one of the that is the main reason that why they grow angry with you. In my case, when I was working in the call center, then some people were really kind. I remember most of them were uh, old people. Yes, but usually when I pick up the phone, most of them I make them upset because they didn't understand. At the beginning, it was like a good call, and then after 3 or 2 minutes, they started like growing a bit upset because they didn't understand anything what I said, and vice versa sometimes. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it turns out you can understand people speaking in many different language or dialects, accent groups of English. If you've learnt these 12 basic building blocks of vowels and the 24 basic blocks of consonants and the blocks of rhythm, because English, remember when I said English was a rhythm language? If I use half a dozen different accents, a bottle of water, a bottle of water, a bottle of water, a
Oof.
bottle of water, a barrel of water, a barrel of water, they all have the same rhythm. And that's really why the native speakers understand each other.
Wow. This.
They're listening for the rhythm more than they're listening for the sounds. But to one of the other things that I find very useful is to do it in the other direction. So if I think of a sentence in English, when when I'm using up, when I'm speaking Spanish, people don't always understand me. So I try to make myself sound as Spanish as possible. I'm not always very good at it, but at least I try. Okay. So here it is. If I say it in as English a way as possible, I'm going to use the sounds of English. I'm going to use the rhythms of English. I'm going to use the methods of emphasis of English. And cuando hablo español, la gente no siempre me entiende. Así que intento sonar lo más español possible.
Yes.
That's harder for you to process than if I say,
Yes.
cuando hablo español, la gente no siempre me entiende, así que intento sonar lo más español posible.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
That's a difference.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yes, I
And that's the
understood.
difference that I try to get people to understand is happening in the other direction.
Yes. Wow. Yes, I understand. I understand the last part, the last one. I understood that. Okay. Now we are going to move to next. Yes. I'd like to ask you one extra question. This is about the book also. Yes. What challenges did you face when developing the Love English Phonetic Dictionary, and how do you overcome them?
Getting the confidence to feel that I could write such a book and it be worthwhile. The confidence to believe that I had something to say that would be valid and interesting. That was definitely my challenge. Once I also trying to decide on a name of the dictionary, believe it or not, once I had a name for the book and I felt that it was going to contain valuable insights and valuable help, writing it was quite easy. I wrote software that collected all the sounds and words that I had and then put it together. And then the biggest problem is with a dictionary, you're trying to provide a reference source. So you need to debug everything you've written. It's like writing software. You need to make sure that every letter is the correct letter. Every piece of everything is just right. And
Yes.
so I would go to High Local, where my friends were, who had helped me with identifying the words that we needed. And I would read the dictionary word by word by word to see if it was right. And other people would help me by reading the dictionary as well, so that I could spot the errors. Because it's only if you go through it, the whole thing. And I only got it 99.3% correct. It went to publication. There were still, I think, 150 errors in it, in the word list. And every so often I find another one. And periodically I put a new edition live.
Did you put a lot of work on it? In it, sorry. And wow, it's a lot of work. Then, in order to write the book, you've had first to get some information and to read the dictionary to get those words that you need for developing your book.
What I did was I looked for the word lists of A1 English and the word lists of A2 English and the word list of B1 English and the word list of B2 English. And then I looked at the word list I had developed from when people were having difficulties with words, I would note them down. So I had a big list of words that I had noted down. And I went looking online for the lists of words that went with each section of learning. And once I had all the A1, A2, B1, B2 words, I was quite happy I had something useful and interesting. It turns out there are 900 words for A1, 800 words for A2, 700 words for B1, and then it jumps to 1,300 words for B2. And that kind of goes along with what everyone says. You can learn A1 fairly quickly. Maybe it takes a little longer for A2, about the same for B1, and then all of a sudden B2 is about double. And it turns out that's the same with the vocabulary as well. It's all about the same, then all of a sudden it doubles.
Great. Okay, Gordon. Thank you very much for the time that you gave us today. I'm really glad of having you. But before finishing, Would you like to say something to all those ESL learners in the world, or at least in the in my Hispanic learners? Yes. What would you like to say to them? Maybe to encourage them to learn English better, maybe. What can you uh, what could be the message to them in order to learn language? Because there are a lot of people that want to learn the language, but some people lose like are left in the middle of the way, and they just quit and stop learning for certain reasons because they say, no, this is not for me. What can you tell them in order to feel like they can continue in this long path? Because I've been learning English for the last 14 years, and I have to say that the first 4 years were very difficult for me because I didn't understand at all. I tried to speak with native speakers, and they grow upset with me, or I made them upset. And then it was difficult for me because I said, no, I'm not good for this. I'm not good at it, and I'm not going to continue learning English. And then I restart again. I was, no, I have to do it. I know that I can do it. How can you encourage all these people to keep going in this, to reach this goal?
So motivation is the biggest predictor of success at learning any second language. We gain motivation in lots of different ways, but one of the ways that we gain motivation is either by loving the language itself, maybe loving someone who speaks the other language. That's an important motivation to learn another language.
Yeah.
Maybe we want a career in another country where another language is spoken. Maybe we want the study visa or the work visa for another country. So those can be powerful motivations. What tends to be less motivating is your boss saying you have to learn English by Christmas. That's not a strong motivation. That's a weak motivation. That's an externally imposed motivation. So the motivation matters. And it turns out you can gain motivation by succeeding in small tasks, small communication tasks.
Yeah.
If you talk to someone and use short, simple words in short, simple sentences, but you pronounce as well as you can, you're aware that rhythm matters and try to use the rhythm, then your communication will be more successful. You will get feedback if it's only the feedback of people leaning in to listen more and smiling, and then understanding what you say and responding. So that feedback makes you feel more confident.
Mhm.
If you're feeling more confident about your English, in this case, you'll be more motivated to go and learn more and practice more.
Yeah.
And then if you go and learn more and practice more, the next time you communicate, it'll probably be more successful, or you'll be able to communicate on a slightly wider range of topics. And therefore, you'll get the good feedback, which will give you more confidence, which will make you more motivated. So you'll learn more and you'll improve. And you can go round and round in that positive cycle, virtuous cycle, or positive feedback loop. Now, as well as that, there's what you touched on, fossilization. When you reach a plateau and you just stick there.
Yeah.
And often once you're there, you lose your motivation to practice and it kind of falls away. So my own view is that phonetics offers most people the biggest leap forward for the least effort. If you can learn the sounds and the rhythms of English and use them, that not only makes your communication to other people better, it allows you to hear English better. And it doesn't matter if you're hearing American English, um, British English from the working class of the southeast of England, or the upper class of the northwest of England. Doesn't matter if you're listening to people from Los Angeles, downtown in the hood, or from upscale Manhattan, they use the same building blocks. And if you learn the building blocks, it's like Lego. You can build anything out of Lego.
Yeah.
But you only have to buy about 8 different types of block, and you can build anything. So remember that you don't need to learn an awful lot to have a big effect on how effective your communication is. And if you can learn to speak using these building blocks, it rewires your brain to listen as well. And if you can speak and listen more successfully, you'll feel better and more confident and more motivated. The other thing is that some methods of study, some methods of practice give you more progress for less time. If you study and practice for 3 minutes a day, 3 times a day, 3 minutes at a time, 3 times a day, each week you will make more progress than if you sat down for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Small amounts of practice, repeated often, especially repeating one of them not long before bedtime, have a really big effect because we learn most at the beginning of a study session and at the end of a study session. So if we have lots of small study sessions, there are lots of beginnings and lots of ends. If we have one huge study session, we have one beginning and one end. Plus, we get tired in the middle and we stop paying attention to what we're trying to learn.
Yes, the concentration.
And if you can make some of that practice happen not long before bedtime, your brain will practice some of the things that you learned during the day while you sleep. So that's an easy win to get further ahead. The other thing is we're on a forgetting curve. Our brain's constantly throwing out the new things that we've learned recently to make room for new things. So if you can practice after an hour or revise a new thing that you've learned after 1 hour, after 1 day, after 1 week, after 1 month, and then just look at the revision materials again once a month, that makes sure that the period of time that it stays in your brain gets longer and longer and longer, so that at the end of the year, you will know more than at the beginning. The other thing is most people try to learn too much vocabulary. The method I most often hear is, I learn 5 words a day, or I learn 10 words a day, and I practice them and I use them in context, and then tomorrow I learn another 5 words or another 10 words. But at the end of the month, I've forgotten all those words. Gordon, how can you help me remember all those words? And my answer
Yeah.
is, that's not how the human brain works.
Yes,
That's
not
not a good
natural.
way to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So this 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month process is a much better way of keeping things, because it's not enough just to learn them at the beginning. We need to retain them for days, weeks, months as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I say the same to the students. I work in an academy here in Bogota, and I also say the same. I say, okay, if you learn today, remember try to practice the same topic in 2 days and then the next week, because otherwise you will forget all that you learn.
Yep. But a lot of people come to class, get taught by teacher, then go away, don't do any English again till they come back to class with teacher again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's very human. But equally, what I remind everyone is phonetics particularly is like piano practice. It's not enough to come to the piano class and have the teacher write up on the blackboard or the whiteboard, here is the chord. Go away for a week, come back next week. Teacher, I memorized that chord that you wrote up on the blackboard, and I've been thinking about it all week, but I
Mhm.
can't play a song. You
Yes,
need to practice the piano to play the piano. You need to
exactly.
practice the sounds to make the sounds.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Gordon, thank you very much for your time today. I hope we can have a chat again uh, in upcoming days or later, maybe next year. Then thank you very much. I'm really glad of having you today.
It was my pleasure to be here, genuinely.
Okay, I'm gonna keep in contact. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye. Okay.